David Tennant got cast as the 10th Doctor because of one of these. Another got Anne Hathaway dragged by every Austen fan on the planet. And one had so much nudity the BBC practically disowned it. Blame bad marketing, PBS, or Anne's fake British accent, but these costume dramas from the 2000s got lost, and it's time to dig them up. This one came out of nowhere, thanks to PBS Masterpiece. And weirdly enough, it's the reason we got David Tennant as the 10th Doctor. No joke. Russell T Davies saw Tennant play Casanova in this miniseries and thought, yep, that's my doctor. And honestly, he's incredible in it. This isn't some stiff period piece. It's wild, cheeky, full of energy. A totally modern take on the Casanova legend, complete with wardrobe malfunctions, sly little anachronisms, and more bedroom scenes than most shows would even attempt. Tennant plays young Casanova, born illegitimately to a flighty actress mother, trying to reinvent himself as everything from a scholar to a doctor to a lawyer, just to get into high society in Venice. He falls hard for Henriette, played by Laura Fraser. But of course, she's already got her eyes on a rich future. Rose Byrne's in this too, playing a curious maid listening to the story as told by Peter O'Toole, who, by the way, gives an absolutely devastating performance as the older, regretful Casanova. It's funny, but it's also a full-blown character study. You get all the comic chaos in the first half, but as the story goes on and Casanova keeps chasing love, things get sadder, more layered, and more human. This one doesn't mess around. It goes straight for the heart of who Lord Byron really was. Not just the moody poet with floppy hair and scandalous affairs, but the first modern celebrity. Johnny Lee Miller plays him. And even though he's clearly older than Byron was during most of these events, he absolutely nails it. He captures every side. Byron the literary darling, Byron the political wannabe, Byron the drama magnet who couldn't go 5 minutes without causing a scene. And what's so clever is how the script is built. It lets Byron speak in his own words, pulling from his letters and poems, which gives the whole thing this really intimate, personal vibe. Turns out, he was a much better letter writer than he was a poet. Vanessa Redgrave shows up too, adding that extra bit of elegance the BBC always brings to these things. And there's this one detail I love. Byron sitting there with his hair in curlers. You never think of the guy like that, but it works. You get this full picture of someone who is both brilliant and exhausting. It's faithful to the facts, but never dry. And Miller doesn't soften him up. He plays Byron as a total pain in the ass, which is exactly what the role needs. This one's more traditional, but still powerful. It's the story of William Wilberforce and his fight to end the British transatlantic slave trade. And while the movie does try to make that story inspiring and accessible, it doesn't dumb anything down. Ioan Gruffudd plays Wilberforce with this steady kind of idealism. You believe he's in it for the long haul, even when the whole thing feels impossible. He's supported by a great cast. Albert Finney, Michael Gambon, Romola Garai, and a very young Benedict Cumberbatch. It jumps around a bit in time, which can be a little disorienting. There are moments where you have to pause and think, where are we in the timeline right now? And it doesn't spend much time explaining who's who in Parliament, which makes the political side a bit murky if you're not already familiar. But the performances carry it through. And yeah, the villains are pretty flat. But with a subject like slavery, nobody's really looking for nuance from the opposition. It's got that same pacing and tone as Amistad. Very earnest, very historical, very rooted in moral conviction. If you're into period dramas that shine a light on lesser-known historical figures, and you like a good underdog story, this one's worth your time. Now this one is a total curveball in the BBC period drama catalogue. Based on the notorious 18th century novel Memoirs of a Woman of Pleasure, it's basically the original bodice ripper. But this adaptation somehow walks the line between cheeky, erotic, and surprisingly heartfelt. Rebecca Knight, who is a total newcomer at the time, plays Fanny with this bright, playful charm that completely carries the story. She narrates her own journey, which really helps soften what is a story about a young woman being forced into prostitution. But the way it's done, you don't feel like the show's leering at her. Andrew Davies handled the screenplay. And of course he did. This is the man who gave us Bleak House and Bridget Jones's Diary, so he knows exactly how to balance wit and sensuality. The dialogue's sharp, the tone's light but grounded, and there's real emotion underneath the lace and corsets. And there's a line near the end that really sums it all up, Fanny wondering aloud if every story really needs a moral. In this case, apparently not. And that's part of what makes it such a delight. A little naughty, a little sweet, and completely different from the usual BBC fare. This one feels like a hidden gem that somehow slipped under the radar. Beau Brummell is exactly what it sounds like, a stylish, razor-sharp portrait of the original dandy. James Purefoy is spot on as Brummell. He brings just the right amount of charm, arrogance, and vulnerability to this man who literally redefined fashion in Regency England. In an age where powdered wigs and lace ruled the day, Brummell came in with his perfectly tailored simplicity and basically said, try keeping it clean for once. He made minimalism a statement. And he made it look good. The film follows Brummell's rise in society, thanks in part to his friendship with the Prince Regent, played by Hugh Bonneville. And it doesn't shy away from Brummell's obsession with status, his connection to Lord Byron, played with just the right touch of danger by Matthew Rhys, and his eventual downfall. It's based on Ian Kelly's biography and directed by Philippa Lowthorpe, who nails the tone. Stylish but never too polished, emotionally sharp without turning it into a tragedy. The production is small scale, but the locations are beautifully chosen, and every shot feels intentional. This one's a bit darker than the others, but it's just as fascinating. A Harlot's Progress is based on the infamous series of paintings by William Hogarth, and it pulls you right into the grime and glamour of 18th century London. Toby Jones plays Hogarth, and he's absolutely magnetic in the role. No big speeches, no dramatic outbursts, just this constant quiet intensity that tells you everything about the man. He finds his muse in Mary Collins, a young prostitute played by Zoe Tapper, and through her, he creates the work that makes him famous. But the story doesn't go the way you think it will. It's not a romance, it's not a redemption arc. It's about obsession, art, exploitation, and the blurry line between admiration and control. The supporting cast is strong, the pacing is deliberate. And visually, it's got that grimy, lived-in look that period dramas don't always aim for. Nothing feels polished or cleaned up. This London is filthy, desperate, and real. Toby Jones is the heart of it all. You can tell he was born to play these kinds of characters, men torn between brilliance and ruin, ego and vulnerability. If you haven't seen this one, it's absolutely worth tracking down. So this one's from Jane Campion, the same Jane Campion who won an Oscar for The Piano, and Bright Star is one of her most delicate, deeply felt films. It tells the story of poet John Keats and his muse Fanny Braun, played by Ben Whishaw and Abby Cornish, and it's based on real people, real letters, and real heartbreak. But this isn't your typical candlelit biopic. Campion takes you straight into the texture of the time. The clothes, the furniture, the way people actually stood in a room. It all feels lived in. You can feel the creak of the floorboards and the chill in the air. It doesn't hammer you with poetry as important speeches. It just lets the poetry emerge from the world these characters live in. Campion builds a whole atmosphere around these two people, and even though we know how it ends, Keats dies young, of course, it doesn't play it for melodrama. It's about what it felt like to be in that moment. This one's a little different. It's a fictionalized take on Beethoven's final years, but told through the eyes of a young woman named Anna Holtz, played by Diane Kruger. She's hired to assist him with his compositions, and yes, it's absolutely made up. But that doesn't stop it from being completely engaging. Ed Harris plays Beethoven like a storm in human form. Brilliant, grumpy, deaf, unwashed, emotionally impossible, and he absolutely goes for it. And honestly, it works. The whole film has this golden, candlelit glow. It's just beautiful to look at. And here's the sad part. Nobody saw it. Ed Harris himself said the US release was a huge disappointment and joked, "Don't let MGM distribute a film you care about," which honestly says it all. This one's based on the real life of Henriette DeLille, a Creole woman in 19th century New Orleans who gave up a life of comfort to serve the poor, the sick, and the enslaved. She later founded the Sisters of the Holy Family, a Catholic religious order for women of color. It's a TV movie, so don't expect lavish production values, but the story underneath is powerful. Vanessa Williams plays Henriette with quiet dignity, and Diane Carroll is in it too. Now, I'll be honest, this one starts slow. It leans hard into the romantic drama side of things, and some of it is definitely a little TV movie of the week. But once it finds its footing, it becomes something more meaningful. There aren't many films that take the time to tell stories like this, especially not from this perspective. And finally, the most controversial one on the list. For a lot of Janeites, this is the least favorite period drama of the 2000s. Anne Hathaway plays Jane Austen, and James McAvoy plays Tom Lefroy in a story that suggests their romance was the inspiration for Pride and Prejudice. And yes, it's wildly speculative. The filmmakers took a couple of letters, a few old quotes, and built a whole fictional romance around it. The cast is excellent on paper: Maggie Smith, Julie Walters, James Cromwell. But the problem is tone. The film leans way too hard into the idea that Austen needed a man to inspire her, as if she couldn't possibly come up with those characters and stories on her own. Hathaway is a wonderful actress, but she never quite settles into the role here. It's not a disaster, it's just off. The film does get a few historical details right, some of the costuming, the setting, but for a lot of viewers, especially Austen fans, the central premise is just too much. It's a pretty film, but not an honest one, and if you're someone who values accuracy when it comes to Austen's life, this one will probably just frustrate you.